Now, let's kind of stick with this because we've seen a bunch of games moved already. We saw Cleveland play last night, and they lost to the Raiders on a last-second field goal. 2 more games tonight. The Rams beating Seattle, Philly beating Washington. So it seems like keeping this specifically within the division, after Cleveland losing to the Raiders last night, this is another one of those things that can just throw an entirely different story into what's already a crazy storyline for this AFC North division. How do you see this shaking out right now with all these other variables being mixed in?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to forecast because you almost want to do research and see the teams that have had players that have tested positive in the last couple of months. We know Roethlisberger has. Watt was in protocol. So the Steelers are in the clear with their best player and their quarterback. Went through the Ravens. Lamar Jackson has tested positive a couple of times. The Browns are now on the other side of this, or so it seems. The Bengals have been unaffected. Are they going to be lucky enough over the next 3 weeks to completely dodge that bullet? I mean, that could be the difference for them. They've got the Ravens this week. They've got the Chiefs after that. They've got to go to Cleveland. I mean, the Bengals do not have a walk in the park schedule-wise, and then you factor a potential COVID outbreak there. So you said variable. It's the perfect word. There's something else. Usually injury is what you had to worry about when you looked ahead and you tried to predict and handicap these games. Now you've got this element to it all. And I guess from a Steelers perspective, you let out a mini sigh of relief because as far as Roethlisberger and Watt goes, those guys won't, miss time because they've already gone through the COVID stuff, Josh.
All right, let's shift over to another league entirely. The announcement that came down earlier this evening looks like the NHL is going to pull their players out of the Olympics coming up here in February. Given the fact that they're going into a 4-day shutdown, they'll report back to the facilities on Sunday to start practicing, and they'll be testing as well. They'll get back to games on Monday. Given the situation that the NHL is facing right now, at least 15%, at least that was the last report, at least 15% of players are in some sort of COVID protocol. Is the NHL taking the right step right now to maybe avoid this becoming a bigger problem down the road, or do you have a problem without her handling this right now?
Well, I think, first of all, 99.9% of the league is vaccinated. The only guy who isn't is Bertuzzi in Detroit. So I'm a little bit surprised that the NHL right now seems to be the league that has been hit the hardest by, the uptick in COVID. So that right there is surprising to me. They're testing nonstop, so a lot of these guys are asymptomatic and have been shut down, and then teams consequently have been shut down. I think the monkey wrench in this whole thing for the NHL is the Canadian teams. And the Canadian government's take on COVID and how you handle it is obviously different from our government. So now that the NHL Olympic thing has been made official, they've got that month of February that's pretty wide open, Josh. And I could see, it would not surprise me if the NHL took a longer break and then pushed some of these games back into February. They said they're going to come back the 27th. I'm not so sure about that. I could see them completely flip-flopping their schedule, and maybe a lot of the Canadian teams would play each other right now, and they'd shut down a lot of the cross-border play in the hopes of making those games up come February. So it's complicated for the NHL because of the 7 teams that are up in Canada.
That might be the most forward-thinking thing we've heard from the NHL in quite some time. We got to take a break. We'll take some phone calls, 412-575-2600 on the Bordas and Bordas hotline. Stick around.